Welcome to the Titans of Industry Weekly Interview. This is where investors and savers who want to stay in the know and actually listen to information that is critical can get a taste of what's on the minds of people who are leading in their respective fields. Today, I have with me for a special presidential election overview, Dave of x22 Report. This is one of those highly acclaimed shows on YouTube. He gets to interview every week exciting guests from all walks of life, and I can only say this: I have seen perhaps 80% of his shows, and it's brilliant. It's just it's great to have him on. Dave, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Leor. Thanks for having me on here.
Brilliant. I want to talk to you about this. As we're recording this is the 24th of October. The question of who's going to lead the U.S. in the next 4 years politically is on the table. And I want to first of all ask you about the WikiLeaks phenomenon. It's insane. It's literally a game changer. There hasn't been any elections in history where this kind of thing has played out. So, you're in the U.S. and you see this happening every day. How do you see this affecting the results, if at all, or has the American public become so aware that this corruption is going on that he's just become indifferent to it, I would say?
Well, at this point, most of the politicians, they're corrupt, and we are starting to see this, out in public. And what's funny about all of this is that we have two candidates, Clinton and Trump. Trump they call an outsider, Clinton is more of an insider. And these WikiLeaks emails that they're shooting out over the alternative media, a lot of the corporate media is not really picking up on it. They don't want to report on it because they're in line with the Clinton campaign. They're in line with the U.S. government, with Obama. And right now, when you look all over the corporate media like CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, all the different news organizations, they really don't report on that. They really go after Trump, and they go after surface issues with Trump. Now, I'm not for any candidate. I don't care between the two candidates, because I do believe that no matter which candidate gets into office, we're going to most likely have the same outcome. And with all these leaks coming out, it's all over the alternative media, all over the internet, but the majority of people that I speak to, it's downplayed, where it's not that important. It doesn't really, make a difference. But it is a very big difference, because Congress subpoenaed Hillary Clinton to hand over the emails with her server that was set up in her home, and she decided to delete them. And now WikiLeaks is out there saying, okay, we have the emails, and here they are, and they're very damaging. But when you look around the corporate media, they're really not attacking it whatsoever. They're kind of ignoring it. And that's what the corporate media normally does. It kind of ignores certain aspects of the candidate they want. And they feel if we don't report on it, it's not that we're lying. It's not like we're doing anything wrong. We're just not reporting on it. But when we look at this, we still have a major problem in this country and around the world. And it's the central banks, it's the elite, the shadow government, the non-elected forces behind the curtain. And what we see right now is that no matter who gets into office, we still have the same problem. Now, I've said this before on my reports, that depending on who gets into office, we're going to see things happen sooner or later. And I do believe if Hillary Clinton gets into office, we're going to see things happen much, much faster, because she's going to try to push her agenda along with the rest of the government's agenda. If Trump gets into office, if he can make it that far, I don't know how long he will last in office. I do believe that they will try to remove him one way or another if he doesn't fall in line. And with all these leaks that are coming out right now, We also have videos from Project Veritas showing that the DNC and all these organizations, this whole thing was planned to go after Trump to try to make him look really, really bad in front of the people. But we see it's not really working. But I do believe that these elections are going to be manipulated in favor of Hillary Clinton. And we can see already, because the call is out there to mail in your ballots early. And the reason why they like this done is because when you mail in your ballot early, they can get an idea of the direction of what the people are thinking. I'm not talking about the corporate polls. Those are all fake and everything. This is what they use to figure out where the people's minds are. And when they receive the early ballots, what they can do is then take the election system, and I don't know if everyone has seen Hacking Democracy, and everyone should see that. It was a YouTube documentary. Bev Harris, who was a grandmother, investigated election fraud. And when they rig the election systems, it's not done from the ground level, because each voting center receives a card, which is digital, has the candidates on there, and they receive it in an envelope. And everyone thinks, well, all the hacking is going to be done while you're voting. All the hacking is going to be done at the terminals. No, the manipulation is done from the very top. And what they can do, and they proved it through this documentary, when the cards are received by the cities, by the towns, by the districts, those cards are already manipulated to show a certain outcome. And when they receive them, the printouts that they'll receive showing that, oh, everything's certified, the elections results all add up, actually, when they take it and they move it up the line, the results start to change, because there's an algorithm inside these cards and inside the readers that continually change the actual votes. And this is why everyone's talking about, cyber attacks and things like that. And of course, the U.S. government and the Democrats are saying it's coming from Russia. It's all in favor of Trump. But this is all being done to make everyone believe that if the elections are going in a certain direction, they need to explain it away, and that's why they're blaming it on Russia. Now, remember, they only can manipulate the elections so far, because if the popular vote is, 100,000, 200,000, or even a million above what Hillary is getting, it's very hard to manipulate an election. And this is what they're getting prepared for. If that does happen, they can't manipulate the election. They only can manipulate the election if the results are very, very close. And we have two things going on. We have the popular vote, and we have the Electoral College, where each state has a certain number of votes. And again, if the popular vote is for Trump in the hundreds of thousands, the Electoral College is going to have a very difficult time saying, well, we really want Hillary, even though the people want Trump. So they're getting prepared to most likely shut down the elections and say that they're being hacked right now, something's going on, and we need to postpone them at this point. And I do believe if this event or this circumstance does occur, this is exactly what they're planning to do.
What you're saying is pretty insane. It's amazing, in fact.
Yeah.
And I've seen this documentary, so I know it's a possibility. Rigging the elections in the U.S. is nothing new. There's been claims regarding the Bush administration in the past, and I wouldn't put past these people anything. I want to ask you this, Dave. At Wealth Research Group, with our free 365 Wealth Letter, our mission is to engulf members with serious content that translates to applicable action that turns into money in the bank, basically. And one of our strongest themes that we're focusing on is gold and silver, the precious metals. How do you think regulations and mining laws and the threat of war with Russia, the fact that according to today's polls, if Trump wins this election, it will be a huge surprise according to the polls. That will mean to many foreign governments that the U.S. people cannot be predicted that easily. Is this going to affect institutions, central banks, governments at large with their gold and silver allocations. Basically, what I'm asking you is, this is a time when people can draw a clear line and say, most of the polls are saying Hillary's taking this. If this doesn't happen, it will be a shock. And would that be a shock that large that will make foreign governments, think about politics in a different way, and this will create a huge opportunity for gold and silver to become money again?
Well, I think gold and silver, no matter what happens, is something that everyone should own. But if Hillary wins, I believe what they're going to do up to the very end is suppress gold as best they possibly can, because if gold rises, they have major problems, because people see that and people realize that there are problems with the dollar, and we do see problems with the dollar, because out in the Middle East we see the petrodollar is under threat. We see the United States government central bankers, that's what I like to call them, all in one name. They're out there trying to keep the petrodollar alive. Now, if Trump gets elected, I believe that people will think that he's going to try to revamp everything and try to balance the budget and try to do everything he's been saying he's going to do. And people are going to get nervous, and they're going to think, and of course the corporate media and the government. Remember, a lot of it is the way the corporate media and the government projects what's going to happen. Now, the corporate media right now is saying that the economy is fine, the world is fine, we don't have any debt, it's supposed to be this way, and this is all normal, and it's all perception. So when Trump, if he does get elected, depending on how long he stays in office, and he starts making his moves, I do believe that the world is going to look at gold and silver and say, we better ramp up our gold and silver, because I think what's going to happen at this point is that the central banking system at this point is going to collapse the economy. I don't believe that they're going to let this go on. I think it's pre-planned. They want a controlled demolition of the economy, because right now, when we look at all the economic indicators like manufacturing, we look at retail, we look at unemployment, GDP. I mean, we have some of these economic indicators that are either equal to or worse off than 2008. Manufacturing is a complete disaster. Retail stores are closing left and right here in the United States. More are on the way. And we can see the unemployment numbers, they're completely manipulated because they don't count those people who've fallen off. So when we look at what has really been going on here in the United States, we're really in a recession. And if Trump does get elected, I do believe, with all the regulations and mining and everything else, I believe that they're going to collapse the system and blame it on him, which means that at that point, everyone should own gold and silver, because at that point, gold and silver is going to skyrocket. It's going to be very hard to get, and people are going to be scrambling at the very last minute. I mean, if we look back at 2008, when the system crashed and we saw what was happening, we saw gold started to move up, and people started getting nervous, and people started to buy more of it. I think this time it's going to be even worse, because there's such huge suppression, and people haven't really been paying attention. And I think when this collapses, the entire economy, I think people are going to they're going to be very surprised and shocked of what is happening, and everyone's going to be scrambling for the doors. And I think if you're not into precious metals right now, I do believe it's time to get into it.
Dave, that's very unique advice, meaning if Trump gets elected, this is not a status quo. They will need to do something in order to redeem the status quo, collapsing the system and bringing in, their solution is something that makes sense. It's been historically done many times over, and it's within my line of thinking for sure. I want
Yeah,
to.
they're just going to blame him for the collapse. That's what they'll do.
It's the easy thing to do. Dave, one of the themes I see happening, no matter who wins, is an infrastructure boom here in the States. It's a quick way to produce new high-paying jobs, get money over to the hands of the people, achieve money velocity. Of course, this is just more federal deficit spending. Now, I ran the numbers, and if you want to live in America today, the actual cost per person is $48,000 a year. Now, this is unbelievable, unsustainable, and obviously, it's out of reach for most people living in the U.S. So it's not happening. Is there anything that a president can really do to get this budget under control, or is the presidency so bought out by elite corporations that he's actually not working for the people but working for the system without any shadow of a doubt?
Well, you mentioned taxes and how we can't afford everything, and every candidate who's running for election comes out and says, I'm going to balance the budget. I'm going to make everything right. We're going to bring back manufacturing. We're going to bring back jobs. But when we look at the real statistics of what has happened throughout the years, and we know that each time they say this, if we go back to 1913, the top tax bracket was 7%. And if we fast forward today to 2016, the top tax bracket is 39.6%. So all these politicians from 1913 all the way up to 2016 who told us that they were going to fix everything, well, we got an increase of taxes up to almost 40%, which is absolutely ridiculous. And if you really look at this, you could see that everything has just gotten worse. I mean, think about this for a second. They're telling us how they're going to fix everything with new laws and things like that. Well, do we really need more tax laws or other laws? Because back in 1913, we had 400 different tax laws. Today, in 2016, we have 73,954 tax laws.
That's ridiculous.
Did it make it better? No, it didn't. None of this made it better. And what we see right now is that every time they tell us this, things don't get better. And you mentioned infrastructure. Well, one, where are they going to get the funds? Since Obama has taken office, we went from $10 trillion in 2008 up to almost $20 trillion in 2016. Actually, it'll be over $20 trillion once he leaves office. So we spent $10 trillion in 8 years. And if they want to improve the infrastructure, which needs to be done, what are they going to do? Borrow more money? I mean, where are they going to get the money to do this? And if they do this and they circulate more of this currency into the economy, well, that's going to devalue the dollar even further. And we're going to see inflation. Actually, this is what they want. Actually, the Fed here in the United States and the ECB did announce that they don't mind if there is inflation. But once inflation hits, it gets out of control. They can't control inflation once it starts seeping into the economy. And it will look good in the beginning. People will say, oh, look, we all have jobs. Most of them will be low-paying jobs. The government will probably have to borrow another couple trillion. But what we're going to see in the end is a lot more debt. People who are making a very few amount of dollars, things are going to be going up in price, or I should really say the dollar is devalued, and they're not going to be spending their money. They're going to be saving it, because the one thing the central bank wants, which they can't control, they can control unemployment because they can manipulate it. They can control the stock market. They can control the precious metals market by suppressing it, and we know that's a complete fact because Deutsche Bank, HSBC, Nova Scotia. Right now, Deutsche Bank has to pay a measly little fine of $36 million, but they showed that they were manipulating the silver price.
Sure.
And the other banks were also doing it. But what we're going to see is that these people are going to save, because the central bank really wants people to spend. And they've been trying to get people to spend, but what's happening is people are losing their jobs. People have lost their jobs. They've gotten maybe a part-time or they can't find work. And most people are saying, you know something, I can't afford a new DVD player. I can't afford an HD TV. So what they're buying is clothing, food, paying their rent or mortgage, electric, and that's it. And the central banks have been trying as hard as they possibly can to get people to spend money. This is why we hear talk about helicopter money. This is why we hear a theory called universal basic income, where they're just going to give everyone a monthly income, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people to take those funds and spend it. But when people are in this type of situation, they actually do the opposite. They save it. And this is what we've been seeing around the world, that people are holding on to their funds because they don't have enough of it. And this infrastructure that they want to fix in the United States, it needs to be fixed. Borrowing more money is not going to do it. It's actually going to make this, in the short term, it might look like it's doing much, much better and helping people, but in the long run, it's going to be a complete disaster.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you what, the central banks have, well, at least in the Western world, have since World War II been on this expansion cycle, basically a debt cycle. The demographics were very young, people borrowed, and the economy expanded because the demographics were so favorable. Now it's the other way around, and they just don't know in a fiat monetary system how to handle deflating a debt cycle. So this is a very dangerous time. And you know what? The reason why it's dangerous is no matter how many interviews you listen to, everyone is just telling their opinion. It's really uncharted waters at this point. So Dave, I wanna switch gears a little bit, and the belief with Wells Research Group is that we're in the middle of a transition of power, a huge transition of power from developed nations to the developing ones, and they're getting richer by the hour. Their demographics are way younger. I think the transition from east to west is clearly happening right now, and it's interesting because of this fact. The U.S. and China, the two superpowers, are very mixed together in the economic mess that they're both in. And China is like Russia is like the wild card here that can turn the balance of politics from east to west real easy. How do you see Russia playing this superpower game with China and the U.S.?
Well, I think Russia right now has been making many deals with China. And we can see China, Russia, all part of the BRICS system, where they're trying to go around the world and make economic deals, where they're trying to help the infrastructure of certain countries. They're pouring in funds. They're making deals. And I know a lot of people are out there thinking, well, through the corporate media, we hear Russia wants war. Russia's looking to make war. They're very aggressive. Well, really the opposite is happening. The United States is actually around the world provoking war. And right now, the dollar is at its end game. The population is older. We're more of a service type of country compared to China, where that is a manufacturing powerhouse. Russia has huge deposits of oil. And we can see right now those two countries together, with manufacturing and oil, it is a powerhouse. And the United States, we've been losing manufacturing jobs here. And I do believe that things are starting to move from west to east. I mean, if you look at China and Russia, they created a payment system equal to the SWIFT system. China's gone to other countries and they have created bilateral trade agreements. We can see that many of the countries are dealing with China where they're converting the yuan. The United States has not done this. And we can see right now, if we enter some type of war, it will be most likely with Russia, most likely with China, even though the United States and China are together economically. But I think China realizes what is happening. They, along with Russia, they've been accumulating a huge amount of gold. And we can see the yuan has been introduced into the basket of SDRs. And we see right now that the percentage of the United States is still very high in the basket of SDRs. But eventually what's going to happen is there's going to be a transition. And we can see that transitioning already happening. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process. It's been happening for many, many years. And we can see with what China and Russia are doing right now, the United States is threatened because they are going to challenge the private Western central bank system. And every time this happens, every time there is a challenge or a system is dying, we end up in war. And when you look around the world right now, you can see the United States is garrisoning a lot of countries. They've moved a lot of military assets into many different countries. NATO has gone right up to the border of Russia. I mean, just imagine this. If Russia took its troops and placed its armies and missile systems in Canada and in Mexico, what would the United States do? Well, they'd sit here and go, whoa, what's going on here? Well, that's what Russia is doing, because the United States and NATO, they have placed military assets and troops up to the border of Russia. They placed a missile system up to the border of Russia, and Russia is sitting there going, okay, what's going on here? And every time this happens, Russia says, okay, we need to be prepared, we need to get ready, because Putin understands what the United States government central bankers are going to do. Eventually what they're going to do is they're going to try to push war any way they possibly can. And when we do have this war, these private Western central bank countries do believe that they're going to restart this entire system. Now, of course, the population most likely will be reduced. They're going to come out of their bunkers. They're going to be saying, okay, we've won. Let's restart the system, because the amount of debt around the world is unsustainable right now. They know this. They know the system is coming down. They realize they can't continue this on. And what they're most worried about is not being able to control the collapse of the system. That's what they're most worried about. They're afraid of a black swan type of an event that comes out of left field or right field, and they're most worried about that. And this is why they're preparing and getting ready. And this is why we see the world in chaos right now. It really is. And we can see that there are more troops moving into the Middle East. There is more troops going into Ukraine. We see the United States in the South China Sea provoking China in that area. And we can see the situation is actually getting worse and worse. And this is why the Philippines, the leader, the president there, Duterte, decided, something, we're going to just talk to China, because maybe we can just sail our ships and maybe we can make a deal. And they joined up to the Silk Road with China, and China's allowing them to sail their fishermen ships inside the South China Sea. And we can see right now that, if more countries can just talk to each other, we can avoid this war, avoid what is happening. But this whole thing is about central banks. This whole thing is about paper and ink and who's in control. And we know that there's certain central bank systems, certain countries that want to keep the control. The United States, they don't want to let control out. They like it. They like those people in power. They like having the control. They like making huge amount of money. They like sanctions, having the control to sanction other countries. And we can see right now that as this comes to an end, as the United States struggles to keep control, and the economy continually deteriorates, they're having a tougher time, because we're getting closer to that point where just one little thing will bring down this entire economy, and they don't want to be caught off guard. And this is why they're trying as fast as they possibly can to get everything in place, control the collapse, and make sure they have a story behind it of who's responsible for it.
Very, very, very true. And also, Dave, what's very important for people to understand is that the U.S. dollar is 71% of all the currencies on the planet. It's the measuring stick for everything, and that's why the Russians and Chinese and other BRIC countries are trying to create something alternative before they do any big moves, because this will hurt them as well, obviously, as debt holders and bond holders of U.S. Treasuries. Lastly, I want to ask you about two black swan events that I want to get your take on. First of all, in short, the Italian referendum, 4th of December, if they decide to leave the EU, what's going to be the next political move in Europe?
Well, I see, when we talk about leaving the EU, I just want to talk about the UK for a second. The UK actually didn't leave the EU. They had an advisory referendum, and the people voted, we would like to leave the EU. They haven't implemented Article 50 as of yet. So they're still with the EU. If the Italians have a referendum and they decide, let's leave the EU, they're going to have to pretty much do the same thing. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes, 1 to 2 years or something like that for that actually to happen. But this will be a trend then where other countries will look at this and say, something? Do we really need to be with the EU? Remember, the EU is not an elected body. None of these countries elected them. And many of the countries are losing their sovereignty belonging to the EU because the EU dictates different laws to them. Just like the Schengen, where they have open borders. And as soon as the refugee problem came about, the country said, something, we're not going to listen to you. We're going to close our borders. We don't want this open right now. And we can see right now that most of the countries, I think they're nervous about leaving the EU. But if other countries decide to, I think this will be a trend. And if this is a trend and the EU system deteriorates further, and more countries sign on to leaving the EU, this would be a major black swan, and this is something that the central bankers would like to avoid, something like this. And they're nervous about this, about anything that they can't control. And they couldn't control what happened in the UK. Most likely they're not going to be able to control what's happening in Italy, because if most of the people are out there, and it looks like they're most likely going to vote to remove themselves from the EU, this is going to be a problem, and I believe that they're going to be getting ready, and they're going to be getting prepared to drop this economy. Italy with the UK and other countries is something that they would not want to happen right now, and I think they're going to do everything they possibly can to stop it. They'll rig the elections, they'll try to manipulate the referendum. They'll do whatever they possibly can, but again, if the majority of the people decide, they can't manipulate it that far, and that would be a problem, and this whole thing would be a complete disaster if that happens.
I want to ask you about the Shanghai gold exchange. Now, this is 100% backed by gold. So unlike the COMEX in London and New York, where it's like 246 paper contracts to 1 ounce of gold, this is actually 1-to-1. Now, here's the shocker. The new Muslim law that will come into effect from January probably will allow for the first time in 40 years to 1.6 billion Muslims, along with their 112 oil-rich billionaires, to buy gold for the first time. Now, in Dubai, they're right now setting clearing banks for renminbi, so they can do this easily. Now, this expands the market by 1.6 billion people that haven't 1 ounce of gold now. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think if this does happen, gold is going to skyrocket, because people, first of all, will not be able to get gold, a physical gold I'm talking about.
Sure.
And it's going to be very, very difficult. And if this does come to pass, I would get gold and silver, whatever you can get your hands on right now, as quickly as possible, because just think about it. All these new individuals into the market looking for gold, never own gold. They want gold, and they're going to try to get gold as fast as they possibly can. And they don't want, most likely, the paper gold. Most likely they're going to want physical, because as we can see throughout Asia, most of the people have physical. Throughout Europe, they have physical. The United States deals a lot in paper, but we can see right now that most of the countries, most of the other central banks, not the Fed, they are purchasing gold, a lot of it. And I think once these individuals come into the market, gold is going to move up. Now, are we going to see this right off the bat? Most likely not, because remember, the central banks, they are in control. They have the power. They have the power to suppress. They have the power to make it look like nothing has really happened, even though we have the Shanghai Exchange where they deal in physical gold. Remember, all of this is being prepped from when everything moves from west to east. And I do believe eventually what's going to happen is we're going to be on a gold type of standard. That's why China and Russia are continually purchasing gold, because whatever country owns the gold at the end, they're the winner. So they're going to do whatever they possibly can. I say they, the central banks, to try to keep the gold price down. And this is then a buying opportunity for everyone, because the demand is high and the price is low. That means get in now, get as much as you possibly can, because the precious metals, it's an insurance policy for your wealth. And if you don't get in now, and I continually purchase every month. I know a lot of people that do this every month. It's you just go out and I don't care what the price is, and actually the price just fluctuates, around anywhere from 1,000 up to 1,300 right now. To me, I believe this is very, very low for physical, and I continually purchase because I know eventually this whole thing's going to break, and it's going to skyrocket up, and everyone right now should make sure that they're prepared for what is about to happen. And I do believe if this does happen, that the demand is going to increase. They're going to try to keep the gold prices low, and then eventually what's going to happen is it's going to break, and the gold prices are going to start inching up a little bit. When you see the gold moving up, $50, $100 a day, you're too late, because it's going to start moving up very, very quickly, and you will not be able to get any very soon once that starts to happen.
Dave, always good to hear from you, sir. You're at the pulse of what's going on in the U.S. because on your show you get to speak with so many interesting people. Could you tell listeners about your show, about the vision of your channel, and what you want to accomplish with it?
Sure. I have two channels. One is called the X22 Report. You can go onto YouTube and find that YouTube channel. I do a report Monday through Friday and one on the weekend. And I talk about economics. I talk about political, geopolitical, what's happening around the world, to keep everyone informed. I just want everyone to understand the real news, what's really going on. I present documents, different information, so you can understand what's really going on compared to the corporate media, where they're just giving you propaganda and what the government wants you to know. I also have the channel called X22 Report Spotlight. This is where I interview many different people, just like you, Lior, people who have knowledge of what's going on, understand what's going on, and I have many different guests on there, like Rob Kirby. I have David Stockman, and many others on the channel, where they give their viewpoint of what is happening, what's going on, and those are the two things I have. My vision is just to keep everyone informed, make sure they're prepared, make sure they're ready for what is coming, make sure that their wealth is protected, and make sure their families are protected and prepared for what is coming down the line.
Dave, you do a great service to so many people, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time here. And we'll see you for a year-end review that we're doing on the Spotlight, where we'll get to talk to each other and just recap everything that went on in 2016. So look out for that. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Lior.
Thank you for tuning in to our presidential special show. This summary is designed to give you a takeaway about how to live your life better and become aware of what's going on around you. Dave and I spoke about the rigged media and about the fact that the Fed is actually running the government. Learn exactly how the Fed is manipulating you at wealthresearchgroup.com/bank manipulation. That's where we have a special report on exactly what's going on, what is the Federal Reserve System itself, and why it's so detrimental to everyday people. Dave discusses the fact that if Donald Trump is elected, he might become a patsy for the shadow government, which will want to blame him for all the economic troubles that the US faces, and we would see an acceleration of a crisis. And if the other one is elected, we all know who she works for, certainly not for you or me. Gold and silver are must-owns in either case, so go to wealthresearchgroup.com/crisis and understand their importance in your life. Dave brings up the point about the fact that the fiat monetary system is built on debt, and now people save instead of spend. So this is counterproductive to the system. So the new president will have to go into infrastructure, which is another way of creating jobs and giving government currency to employees. But he sees it as more deficit spending, which I couldn't agree more on. When there's an infrastructure boom, the effect might be more government and more control over our lives, and it is important to stay educated and prosper by increased knowledge. We will be covering this theme in the coming months and years, so make sure you're subscribed to 365 Wealth Letter, our free letter at the homepage. Dave and I spoke about the shift of power to China. We wrote a special report about China's appetite and epic rise to power, and what it could mean to your portfolio at wealthresearchgroup.com/commoditiesboom. Also, we are about to alert members on a company that can be your largest winner due to the strategic metal they produce, which is crucial for China's middle class. So make sure you're a member for that one. And we already released 2 wealth stocks, and those are stocks that are your fire and forget type. These compounding cash flowing monsters that they're on our website. On the top menu, just click on wealth stocks. You can prosper for decades with these companies as China's middle class is becoming richer. Look, becoming wealthy is all about discipline and the right strategy. Keep strengthening your financial fortress daily by learning and implementing every day more and more. Thank you for watching this special election show, and see you next time as we have upcoming interview with Harry Dent, Jim Richards, Chris Whalen, and much, much more.